Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today, because today is just one of those really fun card making sessions where I kind of was mucking around and things just come together. This creates a gorgeous set of cards, and the best thing is that you can make this out of whatever media you have. This one is very doable. So options are endless. I have this watercolor set here. This is the Confetti one from Prima. And I also have, this is the metallics one from Altenew. I'm actually going to end up mixing these two together because why not? That adds a little bit of fun. But if you didn't have those, then you could also use some inks, of course, Distress Oxide inks, and I have the little Waffle flower mixed media. I think it's a stencil mat that I work on there that you can smush them into. You could just have plain dye inks like the Simon Hurley one. Again, it's smushing it on. You could use alcohol markers and just draw in these shapes and these bits and pieces. You could just use normal pens from your children's stash. That would work. Colouring pens or colouring pencils. You could use coloured paper, coloured cardstock, anything, and just cut out the shapes and then glue them on. So many options. So this one is doable. Now, I am just going to take some of the paint from my watercolor set here, and then I'm also going to take this sort of silvery metallic-y one, and I'm going to add this to all of these. I'm just putting a little bit down here on my mat, and I'm going to add it so that it gives each of these shapes a bit of a sparkle, a little bit of glimmer, just something a little bit fancy. But the one thing I like about using the Altenew metallics is that you can stamp over them really well. So that always helps. Now I am using a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor paper here. This is it has two sides. It has like a rough side and a smooth side, and I am only using the smooth side. I don't know if I've ever used the rough side of it because I just prefer the smooth. And I am just taking different strengths of the same colored blue paint and adding it in these little, I think of these as stones or pebbles. That's what I think of when I do this, but they're really just blobs. They're really just shapes, blobs, whatever you'd like to call them. And I just add more water, add less water. It doesn't matter. They can all be different. They can all be the same. And I'm just making shapes that kind of come off the edge. I guess I'm starting from the edge, but I mean, you could do this in any which way you want. If you had a stamp, you could stamp these on. If you don't have a stamp, then you could make a stamp out of kids' fun foam and stamp them that way. Now, if you do end up getting inspired by this video and would like to create your own and would like to show me, I would love to see which options you have gone with and you have created with. You can go over to our Facebook page. It is called Come Crafting with Natasha, and it is on Facebook. You can either search it on Facebook, or there will be a link down below in the description box below this video that you can just click on and make sure that you show me the pictures of your creations. Now, I am just for this purpose today going to do 3 in my little set, and I am just going to use the primary colors. So blue and red, even though this is sort of pinky red, but we'll go with red, and yellow. And so that just makes it really easy for me. I did think about doing all different shades of blue, you know, like a really light blues, a medium blues, and a dark blues, but I ended up going with really different colors. You could do the whole rainbow. You could do just whatever you have on hand. So again, I'm just using the same paint, but different strengths of it. And I know this looks like a hot mess. I have lots of little puddles going around the place, all around the place. But I was having just a really fun time. I was loving having a play. And these cards are just really, really simple, but end up looking beautiful, finished, complete cards, and anyone would appreciate getting a set like this. So that's always nice to know too. Now, as I said, this one, I guess I actually ended up using, I think I even dabbled a little bit of orange in this one, but honestly, it doesn't matter. In theory, it's my yellowy, orangey one, we can say. And all the shapes are different. I didn't stick to any pattern. I just did some round, some little, some long, some short, some blobby. Anything is going to work just fine. And I just want to make sure that they're somewhat close together. Adding some water, some with more water, some with less water to get darker and lighter variants of the same colours. Now it was tempting for me to pull in and like put little pebbles in between all of these, but I held back and I'm glad I did. But anyhow, it is a bit tricky to see the shine when they're wet, but now that they're dry, you can see that gorgeous shine that the silver metallic has added to these shapes. So I am just going to kind of move through these, make these quickly into cards and show you just how simple this can be. Now my personal preference is to cut these down using a trimmer. You could also just use a die, a rectangle die, or any shape die. I mean, if you want to make it an oval, make it an oval. If you want to make it a star, make it a star. But I'm going with really simple, so I'm just going to cut these down with my trimmer. In general, I cut them down to be about 3 3/4 by 5 inches. That gives me a gorgeous border around the outside. Then I have the Love Thanks sentiment set here. This is from Waffle Flower. Some gorgeous kind of scripty, delicate, and yet a nice range of sentiments. I picked out 3, and then I'm going to kind of make sure that they kind of match the card that they're going with. I mean, if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. Sometimes we just have this vision in our minds about which colour goes with which, but really it probably doesn't matter, not one iota. Now, I am going to stamp these in the stamping platform. This one, I do have a little sticky grid sheet in here too. I think this is the Sizzix grid sheets, and I just hold it down with some washi tape around the outside. This means that I have no need for magnets anymore. And then I'm going to double stamp in some VersaFine Onyx black ink. Now, because I want these to look similar, I'm actually placing the next sentiment on top of the old one before I shift it out, and that way I can get the placement pretty much the same. As I said, I'm not too fussy about making sure these look identical because they're not going to, but I just felt like even if the sentiment is all in the same place, it helps them keep a little bit cohesive because they are going to be gifted as a set. So once I have finished all of my stamping, then I'm going to move on to the sort of decorating part, and I'm going to use the detailed leaf stamp here. This one is from Pinkfresh Studios. It has some gorgeous little sentiments as well, but this big gorgeous leaf is just one of those versatile elements, and I felt like it would go with all of the sentiments, the thank you card, have a special day, and the happy birthday one. I felt like even the happy birthday with the blue, if this was to go to a boy, I would be happy putting the leaves on it too. So I wanted to make sure that whatever element I used, it was going to work for all of the sentiments. So this is a brand new stamp to me, so I'm going to make sure I stamp it off and make sure it's all good to go and stamping beautifully and there's no imperfections or anything. And then I am going to use the same VersaFine Onyx black ink and I'm going to make sure that I don't stamp this in the direction of the blobs that I have put down. So I want it to kind of cross over several of the blobs and not follow that pattern, so to speak. So I just want to make sure that it goes over the white space as well as the colors. There's no rhyme or reason to how I'm stamping here. All I wanted to remember to do was not stamp too much. I didn't want to fill these up, and now potentially I went a little more than what I was thinking I would in my head, but that's okay. It's okay. When we're in the moment, I was happy stamping away, obviously, and I just kept going. So I stamp a little bit. I'm not going to fill these in. I'm not going to add any more color. These are just plain and simple decoration. But I do want to show you a little difference that I'm going to do in a minute. And then this is just personal choice, I guess. But have a look through your stash, see what you might have for stamps that are going to work for our general occasions. So for all occasions, and have a look through and see if you can find something. I just find that leaves are just very easy to use and they sort of cater for all occasions. So once I am going to finish up this blue one here, I have all 3 done, and I just want to quickly show you the difference here. So I have my card bases. This is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base. Now I could have used the same paints that I used earlier on, but I was going for a really quick and simple option for me, and so I ended up using alcohol markers, which I don't think I've ever used to create borders around these, But I have these tricolor, this is the brush, one of the brush ones, and I'm going to take one of those colors. There is 3 in these pens, but I'm just going to stick with one and then go all around the outside. What I was a little bit worried about was getting streaks where the pen had kind of gone, but alcohol markers are very good at, once you let them dry, the color definitely evens out and you can't notice that as much. So I was glad of that. But I just want to show you, if I pop this on here, this is what this looks like, obviously with the colored background, but on a plain white background is absolutely stunning too. And often I tend to lean towards sort of a clean and simple. So the white would often be what I lean towards. However, I think it looks really nice on the colored background. So, and as I said, personal preference and which direction you would like to take this, but let me know what your preference is. Everybody has a different one and that's okay too. And I was on the colored train. I was happy going with this, so I did it. But I absolutely love the plain and simple, the white as well. Now I just picked out 3 pens that were somewhat close-ish to the colors I was using. Of course, I used all different shades and tones on the cards, so I was never going to get it to match all of them, but I was happy enough with what I did get. So I've got all of my cards. I put some double-sided tape on the back of the card fronts, made sure I did my little trick with the 4 tabs coming out so that they were nice and even, and that is my set done and dusted. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this. As usual, there'll be links down below, and I will see you next time. Thanks, bye!